Today I'm going to be talking about MIDI drums and how to make them sound real in a mix. Say somebody gives you live drums and they are not usable. You can transcribe them into MIDI, and it just takes a lot of time and practice, but I'm going to show you how to basically make MIDI drums sound as real as possible and have them be usable in a modern mix. So let's dive into it. This is a session from a band here from Florida. This whole album is live drums, but just for the sake of this video, I'm going to basically show you how you could use a MIDI track if you wanted to. Let's create an empty MIDI region. So we'll start at the beginning of the song. He does a little drum fill. Cool. First, you're going to want to pull up your MIDI instrument, whichever one you're using. I'm using Get Good. You're going to want to make a MIDI map that you're comfortable with. So I've already made a MIDI map I'm comfortable with, so I know exactly where everything is. I'm probably not going to use the first floor tom. I'm just going to use the 2 racks and the 18-inch floor tom. So this doesn't really matter right now what the sounds are. We're just going to get it punched in. You want to listen to the first part. Snare, rack, snare, rack, snare, rack, rack, floor. Pull up your MIDI editor. And I'm going to go full 127, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to alter the velocities afterwards. So I'm just going to... Cool. Now, I'm going to mute these drums. So this is going to sound very extreme at first. Cool. A lot of drummers don't realize that they do this, but most drummers are going to hit harder with their lead hand than they do their left hand, or if they're left-handed, opposite. But either way, it's going to be the first and third hits. So I always bring these up a little higher. Also in Logic, I have it set to where my right click is my velocity tool, so I can do velocities very quickly. Now I'm going to bring these down a bit more. I am actually going to move these up in velocity just a little bit more. Pull them all the way up, and then let's just see. Cool. Now, snares are a little bit overboard. So let's pull those down just a little bit. Let's go ahead and pull these down as a whole. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just humanize this fill. And it's literally just a humanize function in Logic that will somewhat randomize to a certain extent. You can set your dimensions right here, but basically whatever's highlighted, operate. it'll move them slightly off grid and slightly adjust the velocities as well. Cool. Now let's go back and listen to these drums. So it ends with a cymbal catch. So right here, I'm just going to keep my MIDI off because I know what I'm hitting. Same fill. So now I can go ahead and copy this. I'm not going to take the last hit of the cymbal catch. Cool. Now I'm just going to go through, get all these kicks in first. And I'm going to listen through the whole part so I know exactly how long it goes. So right there's going to be a snare flam. Get all my kicks all the way through here. We have all the kicks. And in that last little 16th there. All right, now what I'm going to do, because I know the kicks and the snares are dead on, I'm going to copy these up. I'm going to turn velocity down on this a bit, and then I'm going to highlight all of these, and I'm going to humanize them again so they're not perfectly together, because a human would not be perfectly together. And then I'm going to add in the hi-hats. I'm pretty sure he's hitting a splash somewhere, but I'm just going to do it anyways. That last one was a little harder. Okay. Now add in the kicks. Now, when you are doing this, I mean, you know, he didn't hit both crashes right there because he's doing a flam snare roll, and a real drummer wouldn't, but a lot of times people also won't notice that you put two cymbals right after that, so not that big of a deal, and it does kind of help with impacts. I know a lot of producers actually do it on purpose, but for the sake of the video, I'm going to leave it as real as possible. Now, I haven't listened to this back, so I might have to go back and adjust a few velocities, but let's go ahead and mute the actual live drums and just listen to the MIDI. Where am I at? He really did hit the shit out of those ones, so I'm gonna leave those full on. So let's just work with this section right here. And when you're using MIDI drums, you're gonna want to use your multi outputs. So I'll run through that real quick. I'm just gonna show you guys how I go about routing out Get Good drums. So I will do kick out of stereo 1. I'm going to come back to the overheads and rooms in a second. Snare top, stereo 2. Snare bottom, stereo 2. Rock tom, stereo 3. Tom 2, stereo 4. 4 tom 1 I'm not using, but I'll go stereo 5. 4 tom 2, stereo 5, since I'm not using the first one. Overheads and rooms, I'm going to leave there. Cymbals. Hats, I'm going to come stereo 6, ride stereo 7, and then basically all the effect symbols I'm going to come out of stereo 8. Now, with MIDI drums, since you have the option to do this, I do it because I like it a lot more. So I will put my cymbal overheads and my cymbal rooms on their own channels, separate from my shell overheads and my shell rooms. So I'm going to go stereo 9 and stereo 10 for my cymbal rooms. My shell overheads and rooms will be 11 for overheads, 12 for rooms, and I'm going to go through and do that with all the shells. Now, my kick, I like a little less room than normal. Snare, I like quite a bit of room. Toms as well, but I'll just keep those where they're at. Pretty good. Alright. Exit out of that. Come over here. We know we have 12 stereo channels, so we have one already. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Let's go ahead and do kick, snare, tom 1, tom 2, tom 3, hats, ride, effects, cymbals, cymbal overheads, cymbal rooms, and then shell overheads and shell room. Let's also bust these out to the drum bus. Same bus all the other ones we're going to, but I'm going to mute all these. Alright. For those of you that don't know, when you bust something out, that means you're taking a group of tracks and sending them to one channel. So right now I'm taking all of my drum tracks and I'm sending them all to this master drum channel, so I can EQ or compress them all together at one time. Now I'm going to show you how I would normally mix these drums to make them sound as real as possible in a mix. I'm going to mix these exactly how I would mix a live drum kit, except for now I don't have to gate anything or worry about cymbal bleed or anything like that. When I'm mixing a kick, I'll normally start off with some sort of EQ, and I'm going to start off with just a stock Logic EQ. I'll normally high pass around 30 just to clear up some of the low end rumble that you don't really need in a kick. Now let's go ahead and solo this kick. And again, with any drum instrument plugin, all your tones are going to be different. I'm not even going to go in and worry about the tones right now. I'm just going to work with what's up. So metal, you're going to want to scoop quite a bit out of the. I mean, for me, I do a lot from 200 to 1,000, but I'll show you why. It sounds very boxy around this whole region. Take a lot of that stuff out. It frees up a lot of room. I'll normally do a little one right at 200 just because I boost a lot of 150 to 200 in my snares. So I'll take some out right there, and then I'll go 500 and I'll really come out with it. And then I'll normally go to around 50 depending on the kick drum. So let's just look at the analyzer real quick and see where the low end of the kick is actually hitting. And it looks like it's hitting just above 50. So we're going to come in here and just around 57 is where like the tightness, the tight low end of this kick is. So I'm just going to boost that just a little bit. I'm going to remember 57 as well. All right, let's leave that where it's at. I'll normally bring in virtual mix rack and FGS. This is my favorite EQ and slate for any drums really. This kick is already pretty slappy. So right now I'm actually not going to add any high end because the kick is already fairly slappy. I might pull out a little bit more mids. I might add a little bit more lows as well. But right now I'm just going to kind of leave it. I'm keeping this EQ here right now, even though I'm not using it, because I know I'm going to come back and do something once I start listening with the guitars. Snare. Let's go ahead and loop this little part that has a blast beat and a little roll just to. And now you can hear how like doing the humanize function, it really does set the velocities apart to where it sounds like a real drummer is hitting it. It doesn't sound too perfect. It doesn't sound fake. So I'm going to open up Stock Logic EQ again for snare. I'm going to try and find a couple frequencies that I just don't like, just in case, and go from there. Cool, so that's just a little bit. So I'm going to bring in Virtual Mix Rack in here. And I'm going to keep playing the snare real quick. I might go into Contact and bring up a little bit more of the snare bottom mic. And even though all these plugins, everything's supposed to be phase line, I always check my phase anyways, just in case. This is phase line though, but I'll let you hear the difference. That's in phase, here's out of phase. So yeah, you can hear how much thinner it gets when it's out of phase. A lot of times if there's not a lot of high end in a snare, you can just bring up the bottom mic a little bit and it's going to bring like that bite up. I am still going to add quite a bit of high end here in a second. Again, FGS, I love this plugin. I'm going to start with 5K and see, I might move it up a little bit. Now I'm going to add quite a bit of 200, make my cue fairly narrow. I always boost a lot and cut a little, and a lot of people are opposite of that, but that's just how I like it. I know my channel's clipping right now, or close to clipping, but that's okay. I'm gonna go around 1,000 and just kind of move around a little bit. I'm just gonna take about 2 dB out of that. I'm gonna boost a little bit more high end. For snare, because I did the velocities so much like how a drummer would, I am going to compress. Bring the FG stress in. I'm going to do slow attack, fast release. Bring my output down. I'm going to do a 4:1 ratio. And it's already doing the amount of gain reduction that I want. I always want around in between 5 and 7. That's just my preference. Some people will say that's too much. That's okay though. Now I'm going to bring my output back up. Basically, you want to get to a point where your soft hits and your hard hits are sounding the same volume, and this is the way I like to do it. I'm going to leave this where it's at. I know I'm clipping a little bit on the snare, but I'll saturate it a little bit, show you how I go about that. Let's go ahead and go back to where the toms are. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit tom 1 first. Again, we're still on drums, still using the FGS. Toms, I like to boost around 6 to 7, depending on the genre of the band. Sometimes it'll be 4K if it's like more of a raw sounding record, but I'm just gonna go start off around 6. So I'm just gonna turn this on and off so you can hear how much difference just adding a little bit of high end does. I'm going to start with it off, and then I'm going to turn it on. Awesome. Now I'm going to pull out a little bit of in between 4 and 5. So again, I'm going to start with this off and then turn it on. Cool. I might even add a little bit of low end to this, maybe around 150. Cool, I like that. Maybe add a little bit more top end. Awesome. Now, I am going to compress the toms a little bit as well, because I know there's a lot of parts. If you're doing this, you are going to be having a lot of different velocities. Again, with drums, you want slow attack, fast release. Slow attack makes it to where that initial transient still slaps. Only about 3 dB of gain reduction. I'm going to pull the makeup gain up just a little bit. Cool. I'm going to leave that where it's at. With my toms, I like to EQ them quite similar to each other. So I'm actually going to copy this over, and then I'm going to make minor adjustments to each tom. Alright, so I ended up adding quite a bit more top end to the second rack tom, and I ended up pulling 500 hertz out basically completely, as much as I could with this EQ, and I took the low end boost out of it. Alright, let's move on to the floor tom. Cool, so again, I ended up adding a little bit more top end. I backed off my high pass filter a little bit, just to let a little bit more of the low end through. I pulled out more of the 500 hertz, just like I did in the second rack tom, and I also backed off the low boost a little bit. So right now, these are probably sounding fairly good together. Let's go ahead and just solo all the kicks and the toms. Now, let's go ahead and mess with the shell overheads. So when I'm compressing overheads, I normally keep my attack and release fairly in the middle. My ratio very low. Keep my gain reduction fairly low. I added a lot of 12K, and I boosted a little bit of 200, took out a little bit of 600, and I did a high pass filter around 195. So let's just see where that goes. Let's get our shell rooms going. And again, I'm going to high pass just a little bit, not too much. I'm going to add some 7K. And again, I'm also going to take out a little bit of 600. Ended up adding a little bit of 12K as well. I'm going to smash my shell room mics. Slow attack, very fast release. Now, you can hear that once I compressed it that hard, the kick drum is starting to come through in the rooms a little bit more. So I'm actually going to take the kick out of the rooms a little bit more. Now let's go ahead and just solo these out. Let's go ahead and EQ our cymbals, our cymbal overheads. Already pretty high pass. Let's just see if we can't find some frequencies in the higher region that we don't like. Basically, all of these techniques will apply to mixing live drums as well. Cymbal room mics actually sound very good. I like them. Again, let's kind of brighten these up just a little bit. Cool. Now, my snare is hitting very hard, so I'm going to show you guys how I would normally saturate my snare to bring that initial spike down a little bit, and it actually makes your snare be perceived a bit louder in the mix. What I would normally use is a plugin called Decapitator by Sound Toys, and basically just bring up the drive just a little. So I'm going to show you without it and then with it. This is without it. And this is with it. I'll probably bring my snare down just a little bit. And then I'll also show you how you could do it with, if you don't have Decapitator, you could do it with basically any saturation plugin. I'll do it with some of the Slate preamps. Let's just use the Hollywood. I'm going to bring this in after and just bump up the saturation a little bit. Let's go to where the toms are. So you can tell it adds a little bit of body to it and adds a little bit of a distorted sound to it, but it sounds really good in my opinion. Cool. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the Hollywood on all of them. Cool. room mics, in my opinion, are very, very important when it comes to drums. It really makes them sound much larger. It makes them smack way harder. Room mics and overheads are huge. So let's just go ahead and let's pull our shell overheads and rooms down and just see what the difference would be. I am going to go back to my kick now. And I'm going to add some high end. Probably, I'm just going to leave that right at 750 actually. Let me go back to that 57 that I had, the 57 hertz that I found earlier. Close enough. I'm going to add a little bit of that. Now, a lot of times I'll clip my kick drum a little bit, so I'll use a plugin like JST Clip. Now, I haven't listened to this in the mix yet, but these are all MIDI drums, and we're going to listen back and see how it sounds. Yeah, and that's all there is to it. The main thing is just getting your velocities right, and you know, if you are replacing an actual drum performance, get all your MIDI notes. Get all your MIDI notes where you're comfortable, where you have them memorized, and go through solo out your live drum track and just go to town and start MIDIing them out. It does help if you're a drummer, but the more that you practice, the better you're going to get. So, yeah, that's how I would go about working with MIDI drums. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully I'll have some more videos out soon. Peace.